Eccoci online. Benvenuti e benvenute a questa preview online degli Ivy Pro Days 2024. Ora sto parlando in italiano, anche se probabilmente no one can understand me, but just for the beginning. So ci tenevo appunto a salutare in italiano tutte coloro che si sono collegate per questa prima preview online, perché in realtà quest'anno gli Ivy Pro Days, come sapete, si terranno a Trieste l'1 e il 2 novembre, ma sono preceduti da 4 preview online, quindi 4 incontri d'anteprima dedicati ai temi dell'evento, quindi al rapporto dei videogiochi con il territorio. Ci tenevo innanzitutto a ringraziare i miei ospiti, anche se non stanno capendo probabilmente che li sto ringraziando, e prima di dare la parola poi a Daniele e Federica di Arcadia Café, che saranno i moderatori di questa preview online. Quindi anzi ringrazio Daniele e Federica per la disponibilità a essere con noi questa sera. Dico giusto una cosa al volo, perché è importante anche per chi di voi vorrà poi seguire gli altri incontri. Trovate tutti quanti gli appuntamenti sul nostro sito, anche sui nostri social. Vi metto qui in basso il link alla pagina degli Ivy Pro Days, dove potete vedere il programma completo anche dell'evento in presenza, dove potete anche registrarvi a Trieste, perché l'accesso agli Ivy Pro Days è gratuito a Trieste, ma su registrazione, quindi chi fosse interessato vi invito ad andare sul sito e a guardare il programma e a registrarsi. Io direi che lascio subito la parola, rimuovo anche questo banner, così siamo anche più zoomati e vediamo anche i nostri nomi soprattutto, quindi rimuovo il banner proprio per questo e do subito la parola a Daniele e Federica per introdurre il panel. Io sarò qui nell'ombra, quindi anche se non mi vedete sarò qui a gestire un po' le presentazioni. Che dire, no? Grazie a chiunque si è collegato, si sta collegando, e quindi buon panel, buon incontro. Ecco. Quindi ecco, Daniele e Federica, lascio a voi la parola.
Grazie. Thank you, Andrea. Hi, we are Arcadia Café. We are Fede and Dani, and we will be your moderators. And this panel will be about the cultural heritage of video games that apparently is something that the British game industry can do really well. And we are here to talk about this with some studios and some projects that show this aspect of game industry perfectly. So
we think video games can be culture. There are many ways in
which video games can do cultural work. Okay.
And today we will have many examples of that. And so
we no longer we can't keep talking just the two of us. So the best thing is to let our first guest speak. So we will let Diego Grammatico speak and introduce what is the London Game Festival. And yes, the space is all yours.
Great, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diego, and I work for an organization called Games London. It's an organization supported by the Mayor of London to grow the games ecosystem in the UK capital. And we do this with many initiatives throughout the year, but definitely the most important one of those is the London Games Festival. The London Games Festival has been running for 9 years now. It takes place every April of every year. Next year will be our 10-year anniversary. And really, it's a celebration of games as a cultural medium. So the festival really focuses on the cultural and artistic significance of video games and the impact they have on society. Generally speaking, the festival takes place over 10 days, more or less, and it takes place all across the city center of London. So we have different initiatives, and some of them are for the members of the public, and some others are for the industry people. One of the perhaps most important initiatives is the official selection, where we work with around 30, 40 games from across the world, which we believe have a particularly high artistic significance. And we showcase those games both physically in Trafalgar Square and online through a dedicated Steam page. But we also organize something called the Games Finance Market, where we help studios from across the world connect and meet publishers and investors for the development of their games. And then we do something called Screenplay, where we basically explore the interactions between movies and video games as a sort of way to work with franchises and IPs. I would like now maybe to show a quick show reel of the London Games Festival so that you can have a better understanding of what it is about. Thank you. Perfect. So this is just a quick view of what we do during the London Games Festival. You could also see the next year dates are from the 2nd to the 13th of April. You can follow our LinkedIn page, Games London, to know what's coming up. We have a nice program in preparation for next year. And I just want to say that outside of the festival, Games London also works on mentoring and support programs for indie studios. So we run something called the Games London Accelerator, where we support up to 8 London-based studios. And we are currently in the organization of a program called Game Changer, which supports almost 50 founders from underrepresented backgrounds, and it helps them launch and scale their games business. The studios which are today with us have all worked with Games London and the London Games Festival in some capacity. So when EV Pro asked us to collaborate, I thought they would be like a great people to speak to, because the games they're working on are amazing, especially from a heritage significance. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's a well-rounded project, because video games can be culture, but there are other important things to make a game. You should have the possibility, the tools.
Yes, the appropriate tools to develop games properly, to spread your message.
So we need accelerators, we need events, we need spaces to show that video games can be culture. We need tools to make
these events also,
to make the developers' idea come to life.
Yes,
absolutely. It's an interesting craft, because when we talk about creative industries, you really have to still work an idea which is commercially viable, which can be successful in terms of like entrepreneurship and business.
You can't
ignore also. Exactly, you can't ignore this fact, otherwise you can just continue your work. But having an eye on the artistic significance is also very, very important. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Diego. It was a great trailer also. It was a great view on what you're working at, and it was absolutely wonderful. I wanted to move forward to present the other part of the panel. There are our, how can I say, it's not so beautiful to say examples, our living examples of what we were talking about, where we were talking about games and culture. So we have with us today 3 video game studios. We have people that make video games that show these concepts pretty well. So we have
in three different ways.
In three very different ways. So we have Sindi and Juliette from Episod Studio, and we have Laure from Balloon Studio, and we have Ollie from Studio Morgan. So we will be talking with all these studios about their projects. And yes.
And if people in the comments have questions, write, and we will
translate the questions, yes.
At the end of the lecture.
You can write them in English or you can write them in Italian. We will translate, and yes, at the end there will be a Q&A session. And let's start presenting the first studio. Yes, let's start with Episod Studio.
They have today they will show and talk about one of their projects, but they have many projects about different themes, important themes. One is about climate change. Not an easy theme to.
It's pretty heavy to talk about this kind of themes
to
into a video
talk
game.
about in a video game.
Yes.
It's a challenge.
So I let the studio members speak for these things, and so welcome to the conversation.
A sort of racing game in the Arctic.
Hi everyone, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
I don't know when my camera decided to stop right before we're supposed to talk, but I can start, and I promise I'm not sad. Or we can maybe let another studio go before while I start out my camera, or I can continue. You can let me know, because we're going to present.
As you prefer, we can.
Okay. Yeah, we can go on. So Juliette is going to share her screen, and hi everyone. We are the co-founders of Episod Studio. I am Sindi, the creative director.
And I am Juliette, the art director.
We started Episod because we believe that games are the ultimate medium of storytelling, and we are innovating how to integrate true stories inside video games. We are currently exploring this in 3 games, which we'll briefly touch upon in this presentation, and they're all at different prototype stages, and the most progressed one is Race for the Arctic. And we have been building the demo, as you were saying earlier, that we need the tools and we need the opportunities, and we have been very lucky to have some grants to support the demo of Race for the Arctic. And we'd like to show a short teaser of the demo with you, if you can please play our teaser.
The astronomer was not too bothered about missing the party. He did not consider himself a social person. He did not seem bothered at all. At which point, I really had to know what bothered him. Did anything? He did not even mind the dark days. Far from it. He said it was his dream to work in the Arctic. It's not that I wanted to see him broken. Rather, I wanted to understand why he didn't break. Because I need that kind of resilience in my life right now. Yeah, I need it a lot.
We also bring the same philosophy to smaller projects at the intersection of play with cultural sector, with the science community, and we call this part of our company our Play Lab. And although all our projects look different, they all share the same principles of how we represent stories, culture, and heritage. And we call this our play methodology, which is built upon 3 principles. First, we always start with what story are we working with? And these stories include, or they have included, the Arctic is a final frontier. What does it mean to be an individual in a totalitarian system? How do we represent children playing during the pandemic? Or how do we use VR to bring to life an old form of play? So at the core, all our projects can be dissected at their simplest form, which is a story.
And after choosing a story to tell, the next step is to decide who will be involved in telling that story. And this could be a witness, a data scientist, or a researcher, or someone who is closely connected to the story, or even all of them together. So in our first game, Race for the Arctic, which you saw the teaser earlier, we are collaborating with climate scientists and researchers and indigenous communities to incorporate their stories into the game's world. And for this project in particular, we want to have as many different point of view as possible. And for the first level, we work with Liviu Ivanescu, who is an astronomer at the northernmost telescope in the world, located in Eureka Weather Station in Canada. And we started working with him by interviewing him in order to identify what things we can focus on his story. He told us about Eureka, he told us about his job, his daily life, the challenges, but also the beauty of the Arctic. And the next step involved conducting a workshop with him to go deeper into these different themes and their connection to climate change. We also used this time to create a space for him within the level where he could be directly involved in the creation of the game. And because Liviu is writing poems about the Arctic and has a blog about it, we decided to create a board like those we can find in community spaces at the station to express like his creativity, and we implemented it in the level. And we use this same logic in all of our other projects. For example, Dictatura. This is the short prototype we made. And it tells the story of somebody who was making DIY antennas to listen to Italian music during the Albanian dictatorship, when foreign music was banned. And during his interview, he drew the instructions that you can see on this slide. And this is what you need to solve in the game to complete the level. Another example here is a VR project. We populated the doll's house of an art installation at the V&A Museum in London with stories created by children. And for this, we ran a workshop in a school to create characters and locations and then build them in VR for people to visit the village.
And finally, the most important for us is always the player. The whole story needs to unfold around them. In Race for the Arctic, we are dealing with a few characters, as Juliette was explaining, that we are representing them in the game. And players will meet them through a book that they received from an unknown sender, the Diplomat. We build a diplomat as a role model for players, for them to look up to, and for her to embody all the values and the messages we want to get across with the game. But also because her storyline fits with the other storylines of the other characters. And for us, it helps us to create a link. She is a very good interrogator of all the other characters. And also as a character, she is now giving us the opportunity to build a special level in the game dedicated to the diplomat's version of the Arctic, and to make this space kind of the space where players are linked to the real world, to the real Arctic, and we're exploring different ways that they could have real impact in the Arctic. Whether in Dictatura, to meet the characters like Shema or all the other characters that lived during the Albanian dictatorship, but they are represented in the game. We have conceptualized the secretary with the player in the game, again, bringing all the characters together. But as players navigate life in a dictatorship, they will also be faced with their own plot line, and they will kind of ask questions to themselves about who they are and what they would do in this scenario. And in a different way, in another project from our Play Lab, we were given a brief to create a digital exhibition for a research project regarding how children played during the pandemic in the UK. And we didn't want to recreate just another real-life exhibition, but digitally. But we wanted to give to the audience a sense of exploration and fun. And so we created an origami paper house for the audience to use to open the different exhibition rooms and then to find the different objects and then to ultimately get to the artifacts and explore more and to see how the researchers have collected the information and to finally get the information. And for us, as a young studio that we really want this space in the games industry to grow, we are constantly engaging with the community. And for us, community, it's players on one hand, who we are seeing that they're increasingly seeking to connect with impactful narratives, but also developers. And this can include game developers, designers, filmmakers, who are looking to get into this space to create more impactful games or playful projects. And we have opened our creation process, and we share how we are tackling our different challenges and progress with the game and our projects, and as well as what's happening in this sector of the industry. And we're always in the lookout to connect with developers and designers if you'd like to join us. And thank you very much. This was us. Grazie.
Thank you to you too. This was a very beautiful presentation of your work. It's very interesting to see how even something like video games that are considered something just to have fun with, they are instead things, they are instead projects and words that can tell so much more.
You are doing two very important things. Consulting professionals to talk about in the best way possible about a team, and
about
thinking how to make this team a game.
Yes, in the best way possible. That means, in my opinion, the people that play the game can understand what's your message, what you're trying to say about that team. So thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And okay, as always, if you have questions for this team, you can write them down in the chat, and then we will come back to them later. Now let's introduce the next team. That's Balloon Studio with their project Botany Manor. That's a very interesting and colorful project, and it's pretty atypical. I don't know. I've never seen something like that. So hello, Laure, and welcome to the panel. So I think it's best for you to speak about your project. The space is all yours. We can't hear you.
Oh.
Okay.
No.
That's
yes.
all right. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Is it coming through? Okay, cool. I said thank you and nice to be here, but I'll share my screen now. Okay. Alrighty. So, hello, I'm Laure, and I founded Balloon Studios, I think maybe 4 years ago. So yeah, we're still quite a young studio, and our creative mission is to make games that allow players to escape into peaceful historical worlds. So that's something we're trying to stay true to with the games we make. So yeah, I'm Laure. I'm originally from Belgium, and I moved to the UK around 6 years ago. And I like it here. I live in Devon, which is very beautiful. So I moved to the UK to start work at Us2 Games, and I worked on a couple of projects with them. Lanzan, The Sample with Care, Alba, and Desta. But as I was working there, I was also kind of prototyping and making a side project, which was then Botany Manor, and I got it signed with Whitethorn Games, a publisher in the United States, which allowed me to put together a team specifically to make that project. So these are all the kind of core people that worked on it. We were 5. So it was me, Tim, Thomas, Jim, and Kit. Yeah, we had a lot of fun together. They were all contractors, so they're not really working with me currently anymore, but hopefully in the future. But yeah, the game we made was called Botany Manor. It's the one-liner is that it's a botanical puzzle game set in a Victorian English manor. And I will explain more about it, but I think this is a good time for the trailer. Okay, so Botany Manor came out in April this year, and was very happy with the reception. People seem to like the puzzles and the narrative. So basically, the main gameplay goal is to complete your herbarium. So you are a botanist called Arabella Green, and you're kind of, you're retired, you're in your 50s, and this is kind of your last work that you're trying to publish as a woman in science. And that kind of involves you figuring out more about the flowers you're trying to grow and sort of discovering their unique qualities. And all the flowers have been a little bit forgotten. That's why the book is called Forgotten Flora. So in order to learn more about the plants you are growing, you have to inspect all kinds of clues that are scattered around the manor. And this is an example. The moth spotting calendar somehow is related to another plant you're trying to grow, and then this gives you a little bit more information. So the main principle is to gather enough information from all these clues. And for these clues, we referenced real life clues or real life paper and resources a lot. So we try to kind of capture the 19th century aesthetics, but also try to make it a bit more colorful, a little bit more modern and readable, easy to parse. So we had our research cut out to try and capture many different clues, the typography, the kinds of things you would find in the 19th century. So that was a little bit limiting, but it was also fun. So it meant we couldn't have a radio in there giving you some information. We had to stick to really classical items. So this is one of the plants you grow. It's the first one. So that's kind of eventually, once you learn enough information, you can put your environment together, which will then cause the plant to grow. The plants in the game are fantastical. They're kind of invented, but they're not entirely unbelievable. So they are inspired by real plants that you can find in the UK, like wildflowers, weeds, some plants from different countries as well. Like this one is inspired by plumeria. So we kind of try to find a balance between something fantastical that's a little bit more exciting to research as a player, and also something that feels real and has real botanical concepts woven into it. The more plants you grow, the more you can explore your manor, and this is one of the rooms you can explore, called the flower room. So again, we had to do a lot of research to make level design an environment that really represents a historical manor from around that time, and with the right kind of rooms, the right kind of layout, right kind of decoration, everything. But again, stylize it a little bit to make it feel cozy and lived in, and a bit cluttery here and there, not too stuffy. And also, by exploring more, you learn more about the character who lives in that house, and you kind of learn about her career as a woman in science and the sort of setbacks she experienced. And we try to do that in a very immersive way, so that you read things addressed to you. It's very personal, and you really step inside this woman's shoes. One thing that really helped us designing the manor and just designing the game in general was the National Trust, which is an organization in the UK that preserves these kinds of manors. So when I moved to England, I realized that you can visit these places in real life, which was great, and they feel lived in. They're very well kept. So yeah, that was a huge help. And then a few of the other inspirations that went into making this is the Lara Croft games, because you have this manor. Your tutorial level is a manor, and I always like the peacefulness of it and the safety. So that was a huge nostalgia inspiration for me. And then Return of the Obra Dinn, which is one of the first information gathering games I played. It's about you're on a boat and you have to investigate like a bunch of murders and deaths that happened. So I guess Botany Manor is a little bit the more greener, brighter version of that. And then the other image is Petsen and Findus, which is a Swedish children's book. And a lot of the plants in this book and this style are very fantastical and very funny and wonky. Like you can plant a meatball and then a meatball tree grows. So it's kind of playing on that fantasy plant element. And then another inspiration for us was, of course, the stories of women in science, specifically in the 19th century, sort of trying to remember the work they did and trying to showcase that there were a lot of women in science. Their stories are just not being told, and they were forgotten. Their contributions were wrongly credited, for example, and that was a huge driving force for us to kind of shine light on these people. And this is Marion North, by the way, who has a gallery in Kew, and she's very cool. She was like a traveler, painter, botanist woman. So huge inspiration for us. So yeah, that's kind of the main gist. And for us, what's next? Kit has joined me as art director, and we are currently prototyping a next game. Very different from Botany Manor, but it has the history and sort of heritage also still at its core. That's very important to us. And so yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. And I just wanted to say that the concept of making information gathering something funny is very clever, because it's conceived as something that's very boring, that takes a lot of time, and that is just process, okay? Just the process. You have to gather information, do whatever you have to do. And video games show that even these processes can be entertaining somehow. And being entertaining, they also give their best, because you look for information in a better way, and you get involved. You get passionate.
In your game, the player has agency.
Yes, exactly.
It searches for hints, clues to process, to
keep going,
to solve
yes.
puzzles, but he or she learns about the history of the manor and the woman.
Yes, and they are the protagonists. Yes, that's the special thing about video games. Thank you very much, Laure. There was
you.
a beautiful presentation. And yes, I think it's time to move on to the third and last studio we have here today, the Studio Morgan.
We have
Hello, guys.
we have another cozy game, but both Botany Manor and Morgan Metal Detective are cozy, and they have a personal way to talk about important themes. Morgan Metal Detective has many things. You search for things that mean something for the people, and so it tells us many stories.
Yes, it's another game that delves into deep stories and deep meanings. So let's have Holly talk about it for us. Hi, Holly.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so hi, thank you so much for the introduction. My name's Holly, and I'm from Studio Morgan. And today I just wanted to share with you a bit of the behind the scenes on Morgan Metal Detective and how our game incorporates the environment, history, and British culture whilst maintaining an engaging gameplay experience. So just to give you a bit of information about us, we're a two-person studio and we founded in 2023, so we are relatively young. It's co-founded by myself and Harvey Heyman, and I'm also art director and level designer, and Harvey is game designer and programmer. And our focus is to really create wholesome, original gameplay experiences. So hopefully you'll see that come to life in Morgan Metal Detective. The project actually began at the National Film and Television School as part of our Game Design and Development Masters. So this was our final year project, which we then showcased at EGX in London last year. And it was at this point that we realised we had a game that we wanted to release commercially. So a couple months after that, we formed our studio and we've been working on it since, and we are very close to release now, so it's very exciting. To give you a bit of information about the game, at its core, the gameplay involves treasure hunting with a metal detector whilst engaging with the various residents on the island. Players are tasked with finding these lost items, creating an atmosphere of exploration and discovery. And this setup really allows players to feel this blend of British rural traditions like metal detecting, but also with modern storytelling, so reflecting both the natural beauty and cultural richness of the environment. And hopefully players then get to experience what we like to call this childhood holiday, filled with adventure, history, but also a connection to the land. So authenticity was the heart of this project from the very beginning, and the game draws inspiration from personal experiences like childhood holidays in Cornwall in the UK, which Harvey and I have both experienced. And other key influences include the TV show Detectorists. If anyone's seen it, it's great and it celebrates rural British life, but also games like Firewatch, which is really known for its narrative depth and exploration. So we wanted to evoke this feeling of wonder and nostalgia through our main characters' energetic movements and the animations, traveling through the vibrant landscape and involved in this light-hearted yet mysterious world of metal detecting. One of our main goals was to capture the joy of childhood exploration. So childhood was a really big essential theme of this. Morgan's bounding strides through the environment, you can see her arms swinging side to side, really reflects that excitement, and every detail from the rumours of magic to the optimistic soundtrack creates a very cozy and nostalgic atmosphere. So we carefully designed the world to give players a feeling of complete safety, making the game's exploration and treasure hunting relaxed but deeply engaging, so very cozy in that genre. And we wanted to connect the players with both the landscape and the playful, carefree moments that define British countryside adventures. To really ground the game in real world experiences, we actually went metal detecting. My uncle is a detectorist, so we went out in the British countryside and gave it a go. It's so fun, I highly recommend. This hands-on research really allowed us to understand the mechanics and the feeling of using a metal detector. And we also took along our sound designers, Joe and Luke, as you can see in the last photo, to capture the sounds of metal detecting in real life. So the really beautiful tones of reading different metals, but also the ambience of the environment as well. We started to translate these game mechanics early last year, and we've been refining it up until very recently. Translating this experience was quite challenging. So finding the right balance between realistic mechanics and making the gameplay enjoyable. So we had to sort of gamify it to an extent that the players would enjoy, but it still reflects real life. So we worked hard to keep it meditative and satisfying for players, capturing the essence of metal detecting without the tediousness of reality, although you do find a lot of trash underground, which you collect and then recycle. The game's environment, we've created this fictional island called Gladstone, which is inspired by real locations in Cornwall. I spent a lot of time on Google Maps, virtually walking through places in Cornwall to study the unique features of the landscapes. Some things that really jumped out was the verticality of the coastal streets, the beautiful stone walls, and the striking blues of the seas, which is really mirrored in the doors and the windows, which are all painted this really beautiful blue. And then from this research, we're able to pull out these very vibrant color palettes because it is a subtropical environment. But we also lent towards the more pastel side to reflect the relaxing gameplay. Our island went through about 20 different iterations before we finalized one that was a good balance between scenic variety with a compact world. So this process involved sculpting an island in game engine, walking around it, and then flattening it and then rebuilding it based on that feedback. So we ended up with something that was small enough that a player could walk around with enough variety that it wouldn't get boring. And then in the end, we were left with this island, which we divided up into distinct biomes, such as farmland, harbour, town, to give players a sense of variety, but also a sense of distinction as well. And this really helped our sound designers create specific soundscapes for each area. And again, we took inspiration from the making of Firewatch, where landmarks are used to help players navigate and orient themselves in the world without relying too heavily on maps. So we've used things like a church, a lighthouse, and other aspects just to pinpoint players in that world. And in the end, each biome feels very different and highlights various aspects of Cornwall's natural beauty. Our island, as I've said, is inspired by Cornish natural beauty, and we designed the environment to be striking but simple. So we've used vibrant colours and intricate 2D details that really mirror Morgan's young curiosity in this world. And the open spaces really reflect the freedom of the British countryside, which is important to us, while subtle details give it a bit of depth and a bit of mystery. Our aim was to evoke this sense of childlike wonder. So it is really rewarding when we see players wanting to run around and explore the beauty and uncover the mysteries. We collaborated with Double Slice, who is a graphic design studio, to help us develop the residents of our island. And it was really important that not only did we reflect the British diversity in the environment, but also these characters. So this British culture, particularly its flourishing queer communities, was really important from the very beginning. And the inclusion of these characters with a range of accents and backgrounds really allows for players to experience a rich cross-section of British life. And each character was created to add depth to this world, whilst also highlighting the personal and cultural stories that come with living in these really lovely rural areas. These are our final characters. Each one brings their own background, accent, and personality, adding depth to the island's cultural landscape. And we also made sure to represent authentic regional voices. So we were using voice actors from West Country, from London, and also from the North, just to make the dialogue feel really rooted in the UK's diverse heritage. Similarly, the soundtrack played a huge role in immersing players in this cozy game world, and we recorded a live orchestra at Air Studios and worked with various voice actors from across the UK. So this really goes hand in hand with the environment and evoking this Cornish beauty. As I said at the very beginning, we showcased this game at EGX in London last year, and we've been very lucky to be part of lots of different expos this year, including Games London, but also we've been to America, and we're currently showcasing in Australia, which is where Harvey is right now, is why he couldn't join us today. But these events are not just important for showcasing our game, but also for sharing the unique aspects of British culture and Cornwall's natural landscape. And yeah, we've received really great feedback, and we're really excited to share the whole experience soon. And on that, we are releasing the game on multiple platforms later in 2024. So if you'd like to keep up to date with it, please check us out. Our Steam page is up, and we're on all the socials. And thank you. Yeah, if you'd like to continue this conversation, we are always happy to chat. So add me on LinkedIn or drop me an email. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I think there's something you want to say, or am I imagining things? Not.
We have questions.
We have questions.
At the right time.
At the right time. But I think it can be the right time. I mean, yes, it should be the time for questions. Also because we wanted to start with a question for Holly, because we had a curiosity. Yes, it's a game about metal detecting, and the story of going metal detecting in real life was cool, very cool. And we were thinking about the fact that you look for objects, you look for things, you discover, you dig out something out the dirt, out the ground, and those objects, those things have stories. And they can be deep, they cannot be deep, they can be normal things or not. And we wanted to ask you if these findings will tell some kind of specific story in your game. Can you give us insight on this side of the project?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are different kind of finds you can find underground. One of the things that we really loved was the idea that there's a story under every single footstep. So there are so many objects hidden underground. Like there are certain quests where you have to find keys, or you find somebody's lost ring, but also there's a lot of rubbish. So there are tin cans, there are bottle caps, but all of which you can collect, and then you trade in and you recycle at the shop. So everything actually has its purpose. It doesn't necessarily have a story, but it all goes into creating this gameplay.
Nice.
Also junk can tell us stories about the environment.
Yes.
In a different way.
In a different way, exactly. So before going on to officially starting the QA part of this panel, the final part, I wanted to thank you all for being here, because your storytelling was great. And yes, let's see if the people that were with us had some questions that we can see on screen. so we can read them. Yes, we saw that. What I have to say is that we're not in our usual setting. Like, it's not always this white, and we are not always this bright. Yes, so it's a bit upsetting, I know. Yes, we love the apocalyptic part, but not the cult part. Okay, let's move on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Francesca, and I'm currently working on a thesis of the utilization of video games for the valorization and communication of museums. Would you like to repeat the games you have? Continue. You have developed exclusively for this purpose, and where I can find that data and information about that. Thank you very much for both Episod and Balloon Studio.
Yes.
Games for museums.
I can answer that quickly. I don't have any games specifically made for the museum, so
Okay.
We have 2 games that we did with the Young V&A Museum, and you can find both of them in our website, which is episod.studio. And then I think we have put links on both of them that you can find articles that the V&A wrote about these projects, as well as the digital exhibition. We have a link on the website as well that you can test it. But if you need any more information, you can always email us or contact us. We'd be happy to help.
Nice.
Okay.
We have a question for Diego. I think we all agree that video games can be culture. We have said that today, we have demonstrated it. But what do you think is the best way to make gamers and even not gamers perceive that video games can be culture? We cannot hear.
Yes, hi, sorry.
Okay.
So sorry, it was breaking up. Can you repeat the last part of the question, please?
Yes. What do you think it is the best way to make gamers and also non-gamers perceive that video games can be culture?
Okay, so as all kinds of mediums, video game can tell many kinds of different stories, political stories, artistic stories, or they can be just used for basic entertainment, which we always need also in our lives. So really, it's the usage you make of this medium, right? And how you want to express your message, if you have a message. So in the case of games which are considered to be part of culture, let's say, or they have like a sort of specific message, I think it is quite key to bring those games in spaces where normally you wouldn't expect them. And so to engage with audiences which are not normally engaging with video games, because people who play video games normally in their daily lives, they know that the offer is quite varied, and so that they are a means of transmitting a message, of conveying a message. But the stereotype of games not being a particularly valid means of expressing yourself comes from people who are not very used to playing games. And so I think also part of the mission that we have at the London Games Festival is to talk about games with people who are not normally engaging with them, in order to spread awareness about how games can be impactful and how valid they are as a means of cultural expressions. So to answer it shortly, is just bring video games where in places where video games are not usually present.
Yeah, I strongly agree.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a question
from chat.
from Mattia. that says escapist is usually a negative attribute given to games to make them as a minor or inferior than other media. And this is clearly not the point of view of Balloon Studios. How do you respond to this kind of observations? Very nice question.
I have to say that I haven't heard that escapist is a negative thing. I don't think it's a negative thing, so that's probably my stance on it. Like, I personally love escaping in games, and and by escapist I mean something that kind of immerses you in another world, like lets you feel, like basically what all the games here do. Like, they let you feel someone else's life, or they put you in the countryside in Cornwall. Like, you don't have to go there in order to feel it and experience it. And I think that's very important, especially for people who don't have the means to travel, or people who don't have, aren't accessible, places that aren't accessible to explore. So for me personally, it's only positive, but maybe I just haven't heard that criticism yet.
Yeah, maybe it's like the conception of it's the conceiving games as a way to not taking reality seriously. That was the point. I guess that was the point. But as you say, it's just another mean of storytelling. So I strongly agree on that.
And games can give you different perspectives of reality.
Yeah.
And yes, were there other questions?
Okay, I'm back on the screen for the last question, because there's another question, but it has been cut from Facebook. So just I'm going to put it on screen, and I think it's going to be to hide all of us, but we can read it. So here it is.
Okay.
A really big question.
So we are almost. So if you want to read, okay.
I read the question. Can I?
Okay, if you want, yeah.
Okay. I'm curious because we have many developers here who are not from either London or the UK in general. Sindi from Albania, Juliette from France, Laure Belgium, etc. And they work and mostly based in the UK now, as far as I understand. And they work with British cultural heritage, or heritage that's quite globally controversial. A Victorian manor is the symbol of a certain kind of global domination and extermination of peoples. How do you relate with this kind of British heritage as people?
And then the question ends
goes
here.
On. It's very
goes
long,
on, but Facebook has a limit.
But I think we have the core of the question.
Not an easy question.
Well, I'm happy to maybe start, because I would like to say Belgium also has a very problematic history with colonialism. So like, I don't necessarily feel, well, I guess like for me it wasn't a huge sidestep culturally, but it was a topic that was very present for us during development. Like, we're very aware of that past, and I wouldn't say a manor is like the ultimate symbol of it, but it obviously has some roots into that. So for us, it was a constant question and a constant debate as to how much do we address that history of the UK, especially in the 19th century, when there were lots of plant hunters and colonialism was actively happening. And we kind of came to the conclusion that, well, first of all, we addressing it very clearly turns the game into a commentary on colonialism, whereas the game was a commentary on sexism and patriarchy. So we didn't want to muddle those too much, but we also didn't want to like ignore our stance on it. So how we kind of addressed it is by having all the plants be local. Like, the character isn't traveling to like exotic places and bringing back the seeds home and discovering them. So the plants are all local, native, and she is figuring out more about them, but not discovering plants in a different country and then claiming it as, oh, now this is a British plant or something. And also we try to include the stories from other people, like friends who live in different countries, and the people who work in the manor. Like we try to give them a voice too, and kind of address the privilege between the main character and the other characters. So it was quite a conscious thing for us. I don't know if that really answers the question, but yeah, we did think a lot about it, and we worried about it a lot.
Thank you.
There's one last question from the public. If you want to say something before we have another question, but if you want to say something.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one last question.
Okay. So one question from you, and the last question from the public, and so.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. For Episod, creating a video game that directly addresses such important issues cannot be easy. How are you using gameplay and interactivity to tell the story of climate change? And what makes your project stand out from a classic documentary?
Thank you for your question and the observation that it's not easy. It's true. It is actually very difficult, and that's why for us we've taken a long time to figure out what is the best way to tackle this problem. Because first of all, we don't want to be a lecture on climate change and say this is what's happening. We don't want to be a documentary to show to players that climate change is actually horrible and this is what's happening in the Arctic. And why we chose to make a game is because the third point in our process, that games make people part of the story. And so deciding to make a game, we cannot ignore the player. And we are now figuring out finding a balance between incorporating true stories, but how do we incorporate them so the players wants to find them and not like thrown at their face. And we found out that the most, obviously, like telling everything that is happening is very important, but we found that what is a common thread between everybody that we met in the Arctic is their own personal races in the Arctic, that every single person is leading a race to preserve the Arctic, either scientifically or with research or by planting, everything that they're trying to do. And we realized that our game is not about climate change in the Arctic. It is actually a love letter to unsung heroes. And we want this to be the message of the game and players to come out of it understanding that unsung heroes are important and every person can do something to help our world. And this is what we are trying to do with the game, as a game and not a documentary or a lecture.
Thank you very much.
So the last question from the public, here it is.
Okay, we have Francesco. Love the research work made by the 3 studios. I think this is a great way to work with other cultural institutions or people not used to video games. Do you think this part of developing is undervalued? I think it's a question for all of you.
I think I can just say a couple of words of this because it is interesting. I don't think it is so much undervalued, but it is not already fully developed, like this model of cultural institutions, organization, commissioning works, because here the business model is different, right? You're not speaking to the market, but you are speaking to an institution which is commissioning a work based on some message that they want or some topic they want to be explored. And I feel like this is starting to change, like slowly. Institutions, politicians are becoming more aware as time goes by of the impact of games on people. And so in a way or another, they are becoming more aware that they can use the medium to tell stories and engage with audiences which are generally distant from them, right? And so to treat or to explore some topics in a lighter and more engaging way. So I think we are slowly getting there. Of course, we are still not exploiting the full potential of this, but I think it's something that we really should strive to improve, because then it gives studios another way of basically doing their work. It's another way of getting funding. It's completely different from the paradigm of funding a publisher or an investor, because then you are more like an artist who works on commission with like institutions. And that's something that I think if there is one thing coming out of this panel is also that if you are a museum or an institution listening to us and you have some kind of message that you want to send across, consider using games to do that. And there's people who are very talented, and all the people in this panel are like that are really eager to work and address a topic in a creative way. So that's my take on it.
Okay, so if there are not more questions and no more comments about this, what can we say if not thank you for all for joining this round table and this conversation about cultural heritage in video games. Thank you, Studio Morgan. Thank you, Balloon Studio, and
Episod.
Thank you, Episod. Yes, I was choking myself. It was, yes, kind of awkward. Thank you all. Thank you, Diego. And this was great. We will be here with EV Pro Days before the actual event to speak more and talk more about this cultural side of video games. So don't miss the next.
Thank you to Daniele and Federica for the moderation, and thank you to all our guests. I'm switching to Italian for a second. Or maybe I can stay in English. The next online preview is going to be next Saturday. So if you want to join for the second online preview, there's another preview on Saturday. And thank you again to all our guests. And I hope to see you in person one day. Maybe you are going to come to Italy or to the next edition of the EV Pro Days, maybe. So thank you again for accepting our invitation to the online preview. Thank you. So, ci vediamo sabato per la prossima preview online. And ciao a tutti, ciao a tutte.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.